organizations like the Black Consciousness Movement of Azania, and they had an armed wing, AZAPO, and also the ANC had armed wing too. People tend to want to ignore that part. And then the Pan-African Congress of Azania. And we embraced all of them, you know. But then there was a lot of times when white allies in the anti-apartheid movement played favorites because they weren't for, you know, either Pan-Africanism and Black consciousness made them more comfortable, or they didn't like the idea of armed struggle, or whatever. And even to this day, a lot of people give more credence to the abolishing of apartheid, and that's not it wasn't the complete systemic change that needs to happen in South Africa. You can see South Africa now and understand that. They give too much credence to the anti-apartheid movement outside of the country than they do to the people struggling on the inside, even those who had to take up arms against the government. And I think we have to look at, and I'll end with this. These are this last, what advice could I give? And one, read. Try to understand the movements that you're trying to, and especially the historical context of the movements you're trying to be in alliance with. And don't pick and choose the part or that movement that makes you feel okay. Be as broad as possible. We have to be that just to understand our own movement. And so if you're trying to help and be in alliance with it, we should do that with anything. Any group that we're not a part of, but we're trying to be an ally to, we gotta be honest. We gotta be real and understand the context of which it comes. So I'll just leave it there. Thank you.
There's a bunch of seats over here or in the front. If those of you who are kind of stuck in the pull-up analysis, okay, great.
Could you say the speaker's name again, please?
That was Netfa Freeman. Woo!
Is somebody good? Okay, I'm keeping time. I want cards. Yeah, I'm also going to sit, unless somebody objects. No. Okay. So my name is Omalar Williams McAllister, and if you encounter me somewhere, you can call me O or Omo, like oh no, but with an M, or Lara or Omolara. You can call me all of those things. I don't get the same list of questions that you got, but I just got something forwarded to me, so I will briefly answer those questions and then say the other things that I wanted to say. So what organizing is happening right now in the Black Lives Matter movement, especially by your group in DC? So as Netfa was saying, as he ended, there's a whole network of groups that are working in different issues that are led by people who identify or are identified as Black around things like Black liberation that are either specifically aligned with Black Lives Matter or aligned with things that were pre-existent to Black Lives Matter. And so, and being an individual person who's dynamic, I work with many of those groups and in between those groups in a whole range of different ways. I'm going to let Aaron speak to the work of Black Lives Matter, DMV more broadly, but that's one of the groups that I work within. Black Lives Matter DMV is an extension of Black Lives Matter, which is the national movement that was founded by 3 women, Patrice Cullors, I can never remember her last name. I think it's Tumedi. And Alicia Garza. Following the death of Trayvon Martin, they did a whole bunch of work that really set the groundwork, as Netfa was starting to say, for the Black Lives Matter movement after the death of Michael Brown. And now the work that they're doing moving forward is having a national movement that has local chapters that connect with each other and share resources and get aligned around one major thing, which is that we are working to support those who are most marginalized in Black communities and to affirm all Black lives as mattering. And I'll read a specific statement from that later. And so my work kind of works around that in some ways, but also diverges from it in other ways. So other things that I have done, I guess one of them is organizing White Allies. So many of you may have been at Dear White Allies in January, which was an initiative that I developed and organized and passed that work on to Washington Peace Center, which is doing an amazing job carrying them on. So working with solidarity groups is one part of what I do. Fundraising, which Netfa also talked about, is another group. So every month we do a Towards Liberation. Better? Every month we do a Towards Liberation party, which raises funds for Black Lives Matter DMV, and that goes to like the basic costs of running a movement. People are like, well, what do you spend the money on? And it's like, well, if you think of a nonprofit organization, they have things like they need to print things, and they need to buy supplies for trainings like this, or they need to bail people from jail. Well, we have to bail people from jail. I don't know that nonprofits have to do that. When they get arrested for dumb things, you know, or
For movement things.
for movement-based things, when they are protesting and are arrested, not when they're like randomly drunk and driving, which they do. So that's another thing that I do. And then the major thing that I guess I'm doing right now is Solidarities, which is an ongoing collaborative arts-based protest movement. That was a lot. So it's an ongoing collaborative arts-based protest movement that combines arts education, social media, popular education, and understanding of the nonprofit industrial complex to bring arts-based workshops that encourage discussion about different issues, specific issues that impact the quality of life of people who identify or are identified as Black. And so we're talking about racism and systemic racism. We're talking about social health determinants. We're talking about vocabulary, anti-oppression vocabulary. We're talking about safe space versus comfortable space. We're remembering the names and the lives and the stories of people who have been victims of state violence, and we're defining state violence more broadly than people who literally have to be killed by bullets coming from the guns of police, because there's a whole range of ways that people die at the hands of the state, like not having access to health care, or not having access to the rights of citizenship that allow you to access a whole broad range of other services. Those are all things that can be defined as state violence. So the other thing that I guess I want to say in reference to that question is social media. So you've seen Aaron and I here sitting on our phones as Netfo was talking, and it's not because we don't love him. It's because we are organizing. As we're sitting on the panel, we're both tweeting and Instagramming and Facebooking as we sit here on this panel. And as I say that, I'm going to ask all of you who have smartphones and have social media profiles to take out your smartphones and take some pictures. You can take a selfie. You can take a picture of us. Is it okay if they take a picture of us? Okay. You can take a picture of us. You can do whatever. I just need you to take that picture and put it on your Facebook, put it on your Instagram, put it on your Twitter, put it on the other things that I don't understand in social media. Hashtag it DC Solidarity and tell people what you're doing. So one of the major things that I have used in my organizing has actually been social media, and one of the main things that you as a white ally can do is share your access to white empathy and white brain space. So that means putting all over your social media profiles, I am doing this. This is important to me because this is the way that I'm spending my time. Social media is the thing that's been my primary organizing tool. It's how I got 150 white people to come to Dear White Allies in January, most of them not people that I knew. All of them now people who continue to contact me and do really great work. It's also how Solidarities got off the ground. What's the next question? Do you have that? 5 minutes. What are the goals of the movement? So, NETFA's been in longer and more movements, but I would say that the Black Lives Matter movement is actually very, very young. And in DC, it's really, really, really young. I would say in DC, it maybe got off the ground in November, following the decision not to indict Officer Darren Wilson in the death of Mike Brown. And what that means is that we are building movement, we are building infrastructure, we are doing trainings, we are getting people organized, and we are figuring out all of that stuff as we build it. And so in terms of goals, the broader goal is Black liberation, and the means and the short-term markers are things that are still being parsed out. When we talk later about maybe some of the different groups that are doing different work, one of the reasons why in movement building you need all of these different organizations is so that people can specialize and focus on different things and use different strategies. Some people may believe in armed struggle, some people may believe in protests on the street, some people may do work within organizations, and you all will talk about that in your breakout groups, the different ways that you may choose to engage with movement building. It's the same thing for Black organizers who are working in communities. What are the roles that I see for allies? I'm going to use notes, which will help me be shorter. So in December, I was invited to 6 to 9 to speak at Hanukkah, and I talked about 5 points, 5 important things that I think allies should do, and these were also the basis for the Dear White Allies training. I'm going to go through those 5 things in the last 2 minutes that I have. The first thing, and you can take notes. The first thing is to think critically and creatively about how your privilege affects the way that you view and interact with others, particularly those who do not share your privilege. And when I say your privilege, I do not mean just your white privilege. For me, as a Black woman, a poor Black woman who has mental disabilities, I have lots of marginalized identities, and I can really focus on those. But one of the ways I've been pushed by the Black Lives Matter movement is that I'm queer, so I'm like, I'm queer. I have that kind of impression, but I am cisgendered, and I get pushed really, really hard by my other organizers who love me about the things that I do that do not infirm the lives of trans people. And so when I say your privilege, I want you to think really broadly about your privilege. I want you to think about age, I want you to think about class, I want you to think about ableism. If you make a list of the ways that you are privileged, it is probably longer than the list of the ways that you are marginalized. Every once in a while, I do that for myself. The second thing is to spare me the burden of proof, of educating, or justifying. So do your homework, read, research, check your facts, check your sources, and realize that I'm having to do the same thing. Listen first and always, and if you lead with questions. Lead with questions directed towards an appropriate source. An appropriate source is someone who you are already in dialogue with, or relationship with, or someone who has accepted your invitation to dialogue. You can ask for an invitation, it may be turned down. Respect that. There are some spaces where someone may be open to dialogue. I'm currently sitting on a panel where you will be able to ask me questions. There are other spaces where they may not be open to dialogue. I might be at a party, and you may be like, hey, so what do you think about, I'm at a party. Great. I'm not going to answer your question right now. And when I say I'm not going to answer your question, don't press me. I'm not going to answer your question. That's privilege. So, third, be open to making mistakes and willing to apologize for them. In doing so, you are not apologizing for your privilege. You're apologizing for not taking the time to be aware of how your privilege shows up and how and if it affects people who don't have that privilege when it shows up. That's the third time I've said that, apologizing and privilege and being aware of your privilege thing, because it's really, really important. 4, there's only 2 more points. 4 is respect and protect our boundaries and our spaces. And when I say our boundaries and our spaces, I say people who identify or are identified as Black. So as a marginalized community, sometimes we find a little corner of the world that gets to be ours. And sometimes people find that corner who are not people who identify or would be identified as Black, and they're like, this is really cool. All these people are so cool. I really like this conversation. This is dope. And decide that they want to be in that corner. We only have so many of those corners, so many spaces where we can walk into a room and be like, not counting the number of people who identify or are identified as Black. Like, I'm sitting here and I'm counting it, and it's true, it's a training for white people, but this is actually really representative of a lot of spaces that I go into in general, in terms of being able to just look around the room and be like, look, how many of y'all are there in here, right? And sometimes there aren't others. So you'd be like, I'm alone, so if you find yourself in a space, as a person who carries the privilege of identifying or being identified as white, realizing that you don't have to identify as white to carry white privilege, if you find yourself in a space and you're like, I'm the only white person, think about that for a moment. I'm the only white person. Was I invited here? Is this a space that's only for other people? Did I happen into somebody's thing? Maybe I should leave, even though this is really cool. Maybe I should just let them have this, right? Okay. 5, last point. I am asking you to wake up every day and choose to do this work. And this is the work of the last four things that I've asked, which are very personal things. The first one being to be aware of your privilege. The second, to take the time to educate yourself. The third, to be open and willing to make mistakes over and over again. The fourth, to respect our boundaries. I'm asking you to wake up every day and choose to do this work, because you have to do that in order to continue to engage in it, but you don't have to do it because that's how privilege functions. So you don't have to engage in this unless you want to. But I'm asking you to choose to do it, and I'm asking you to choose to do it every day, or every hour, or every moment, or in the moment that you find yourself I don't think it's microaggressing, but I'll use that term, and you find yourself aggressing against someone, and you can choose to be like, what I really meant was blah, blah, or just be like, you know what, I messed up. I'm sorry, I'm gonna go fix myself now. Choose. I'm gonna go, because it's Aaron's turn. He's in the middle.
It's always difficult to go speak after Omar. I try and avoid it whenever possible. My name is Aaron Goggins. I am an organizer, artist, man about town in general. I am a member of Black Lives Matter DMV. I'm also happy to be recently having joined the board of the Washington Peace Center. And in my day job, which, it's not really a day job, but the thing that I do for 16 to 24 hours a day is work for the DC Employment Justice Center. And I guess I'll get started with a little bit more in depth about what the landscape of the current movement is in DC. So Black Lives Matter DMV is a group that was, like Omar said, affiliated with the national organization. The other organizers are Erica Totten and Lords Ashley Hunter. And the work that I think that we do that's a little different than what other groups on the ground are doing is really focusing on healing and focusing on engaging allies. And so Lords and Erica do a lot of healing work, a lot of emotional emancipation and like leadership development and getting Black people to kind of what I would call, and I think it's not how they phrase it, but what I would call decolonizing our own mind and dealing with internalized oppression and like actually having, healing the wounds of being Black in America. And I think me and Omar also do that, and then also organize allies. There's also DC Ferguson, which I think is probably the most well-known group. It was the first group started specifically after the non-indictment of Darren Wilson. And DC Ferguson is a group of 5 core organizers who are focusing now on ending the jump outs and really focusing on holding the Metropolitan Police Department accountable for the violence that they're perpetrating on Black people in DC. They have done a lot of marches, a lot of rallies, and now they're kind of growing and having committees, doing press releases, doing research. They took on the outreach for the oversight hearing and have been working with Rafael Briscoe, who was a young man who was killed by the MPD in April 2011, and working with his family and making sure that like his story and his voice is out there. And they have a petition to end the jump outs in DC, and the jump outs are a paramilitary tactic in which police in unmarked cars drive through places mostly in southeast, east of the river. Police in unmarked cars jump out of their cars onto unsuspecting, innocent young Black people and search them and just basically try and, depending on who you ask, just try and get them on some charge, right? And the idea, as I think Kathleen Lanier talks about it, coming from the gun recovery, is supposed to be that it like stops petty crime, but what it actually does, it just terrorizes Black people and it criminalizes Blackness. And so they're working to stop that tactic. You should sign a petition. Think More, which is another group in DC, has been doing a lot of just stopping business as usual and raising the consciousness of the Black community. And so they did the action last night, shutting down 14th and U, and they were the group that was shutting down the highways, which I think a lot of people have critiques about the effectiveness, but it is by far my favorite thing to do. So I'm really excited by the work that they do, because sometimes you just need to shut shit down.
Yeah.
And then there's a DC Hands Up Coalition, which is also focusing on police brutality and bringing in other organizations who do this work into a larger coalition. That's everybody. I think it's a complicated landscape, and with a lot of people being friends and a lot of people like doing work with different groups. You can go to people's Facebook page, just Google. So I want to thank my other panelists for a lot of the information that you guys brought up. I think it was really great. A few things that I want to talk a little bit more about are just kind of further complicating the ally relationship and dealing with this, the tension between people as individuals and people as members of a group, and understanding that I'm an individual first, and my blackness is a part of my identity, but it is only one part. It's an extremely important part for me. It is less important for other black people. So where I'm interacting with an individual person, I'm interacting with you as Aaron Goggins, the 26-year-old kid from Falcon, Colorado, who is used to interacting with white people and relates to my blackness in a very particular way. And I'm talking to you as somebody who identifies in a various stream of ways. And what you have to understand is navigating that dynamic between what you have to assume of me just to speak English, right? Like, hello, sir. Hello, ma'am. Hello. I'm not going to say your gender because we don't have to gender people when we meet them, right? Like, there are cultural norms that you have to navigate, and there are individual histories that you kind of have to learn and relate to. And so one part I want to focus on is what does being an ally actually look like on a day-to-day basis? What is it, so one thing I will say is, sorry, I really want to start rapping right now. Is this idea that everybody kind of is going through something, right? And that you're gonna fuck up, right? Like, white people do really stupid shit. It's just like part of that. People do stupid shit, but there is a way in which white people were socialized to do things in a way that is very violent, perpetuates violence against people who are not white. And then there are ways in which people of color have been socialized to deal with that, internalize that, make it okay, or because of their political analysis, because of how they're raised, react to that in very specific ways. And so one of the, I think, important parts of being an ally is a commitment to dialogue, and is a commitment to building authentic relationships, and understanding that the way in that works is extending vulnerability, right? And being vulnerable with another person, and then when you're challenged, understanding where that challenge is coming from a society level, from an individual person level, and being willing to break that relationship. There's no list of things you can do. There's no habits you can take up in which you'll never offend a person of color. That's just not a thing that can happen. I couldn't tell you that. My best friends who are white offend me all the time, and we're friends because we talk about it and I name it and we go through it. And another part of the analysis I want to kind of talk about is how diverse the Black experience and therefore the Black political analysis is. I think we were talking before this panel started about how we all agree on so many things, and so how we're going to give these different versions. But there's a lot of things that I'm not a Pan-Africanist. I'm from Colorado. I come from a very particular type of Black movements. I come from people who idolize the NAACP and just middle-class Black respectability, and we're Americans and we need to be enfranchised, and I'm not an African because I was born here. I'm really proud of the history that we've had in the past 400 years. And understanding that how that also shifts and changes, and coming to DC where Pan-Africanism is a much more ingrained and cultural thing. I've gotten a bigger appreciation for it and can understand it, right? And understanding that shifts how we interact. And the last thing I want to talk about a bit is the idea of white spaces and asserting whiteness. And I think Omalora brought it up in a really great way. Just oftentimes when you're a person of color, you're walking into a space and you're literally counting how many people like you there are. And I want to go into a bit like what that means and what that looks like, and talk about the different rules there are for interacting in white spaces versus black spaces, versus like even breaking it down middle class black spaces, or in every other racial group is also not monolithic, right? Like different classes in Korean culture, like it changes how you're supposed to show up and leave and everything. And that one of the things that happens is when people feel uncomfortable in their own space, they assert their identity to kind of put back the cultural norms. So if you're ever in like a town hall, right, and it's like a mixed town hall, but it's mostly white, and someone asks a question, and then a black person will stand up and give this whole long story to before they answer the question, and have to like situate their question in their context. That is something that's like generally really accepted in the black community. But there's a lot of looks and stares and like a discomfort that'll happen around white people around them. They're like, no, you just ask a quick question and then you get your answer. That's how it works. We have an agenda, we need to get through it. And that actually leads people to like curtail what they're going to say, and like leads to people of color not being involved, right? And one of my favorite examples, and I'll just leave it here, is the Metro. And if you ever take the Metro from like Branch Avenue to Greenbelt, which I'm not sure why you do this, but if you want to do it for fun, one thing you can observe is kids getting on Anacostia, right? You'll just see like black kids getting on, and I love it. It's like, so I will do this for fun because I love DC black teenagers. I think they just like have a level of swag that you just don't see anywhere else. It's really admirable, and I want to like learn from them. And you just see like there's like a boisterous sort of like energy if it's right after school, and like teenagers, they might play music, they're hanging out, they're talking, they're having a conversation, right? And there's just like rules you follow. When an older person gets on, you stand up, you let them sit down. And then you get to like gallery place. And then like white people come on, and you'll just notice the black teenagers are just like a little quieter, right? They're just like, they talk closer together, they're just hanging out, it's not their space anymore. And if they do, right, if they're just like, school's out, we're excited, just like the look on white people's faces is just like, oh my God, what's going on? And you'll see that interaction until you get to like Petworth and it's all white, and those black kids are like, and I think you have to think about that, right? Because that, to me, is where I experience most of the violence of society, right? It's like all of these subtle things that white people do to assert their whiteness in order to make me police myself, to make me change the way I interact, to shut me up and not let me assert my own like individuality in a space, are these little things of asserting whiteness. And that's something I hope to talk about today.
Wow.
Thank you so much to all of you. We have a few minutes for questions, and here's what I'm going to say right after Erin said. There's going to be time for you all to express your feelings and thoughts, like in 5 to 7 minutes. But we only have about 5 to 7 more minutes to hear these voices up in the front of the room. So if I open up for questions right now, actually, what I'm going to ask people to do is really just ask a question. But I really do want to make sure there's enough time to hear a little bit more from these folks, and then the rest of the next 2 hours or so is really going to be all much more interactive and sharing your own experiences and thoughts and talking through some of these questions. So I'd like to just take a few questions. Anyone who's got something, why don't you raise your hand, and we'll just take a few at a time, and we'll give them all to the panelists at once. I see 2, we got 3. All right, 4. We'll start with these 4.
I just wanted to know if, especially the list that you were bringing up, Omar, but any of your remarks are going to be, like, are online or available anywhere, because they couldn't write.
We can email lots of stuff at the end, but that's question number 1. We got question number 2 again?
It's quick. Could you please write the names of the panelists up on that sheet so we can all see them and spell their names correctly?
Yeah, we can do that. We can also send that out in the follow-up and put it in the Facebook Facebook event, but I can do that while they're talking. 3 was right here.
I have a soft voice. What are you guys doing to educate the black community how to, end up like Michael Brown or Trayvon Martin? It talks about the Hands Free Coalition, so is that part of what the Hands Free Coalition is doing?
Historically, when you get this type of gathering where people begin to discuss things across racial lines, at some